Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is Tuesday, and we are ready to jump into the deep end of the pool, the deep dive. We've got the weekly top three waiting in the wings with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budges. We're going to talk with him here in just a second about all the hot news of the day. Then in hour two, I'll have some recap, plus the latest story on what's happening over at MustRead, Alaska. And it's going to be interesting to watch how that all plays out here in just a little bit. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, we'll finish up, as we always do on Tuesdays, with our good friend Chris Story, who comes on to give us the positivity segment, the life coaching, whatever you want to call it. It's a bit of good news at the end of a trying day. It'll be fun. It'll be awesome after we get the full truth bomb dropped on us. We'll need to salve our wounds a little bit here, and that's what's gonna happen. So that's on today's show. Also, by the way, just a full week already. Next couple weeks as we continue with our local series with local candidates. It seems to be the only time we bring some of these folks on. We're going to be talking with Kendall Cruz tomorrow, who's running for the Matsu School District, and we're also going to be talking with JT McComas Rowe, who is running for Borough Assembly in Fairbanks tomorrow. And so we're going to be all over the state tomorrow talking about things. So it's going to be it's going to be good. So that's all happening. But first, let's dive into it and get ready to go here with the weekly top three. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budges. He joins us this morning to get things started. Hello, Brad. How you doing, my friend?
Michael, I'm doing great today. How about you?
You know, there's no complaints. No complaints. Every day above ground's a good day, right? That's what they say. That's how we get started here.
I was intrigued by you going through the guest list. You're proving your statewide reach here with guest lists from Fairbanks and Kenai and elsewhere.
Yeah, Fairbanks, Kenai, Matsu. We're going to have a bunch of different folks on here over the next few weeks as we get into this local stuff, because I mean, this is where we need to be paying attention as much as the national stuff enthralls us all. I think we should be paying closer attention to what's going on. All right, well, let's get into it, Brad. Let's dive in and get started. First things first, Robb Myers is right on the Permanent Fund Corporation. He's right on a lot of stuff, but on the Permanent Fund Corporation especially, this is a big issue. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Robb Myers is right on almost everything. He wrote in this, excuse me, in this particular case, he wrote a column that appears in both MustRead. I'm going to be interested in your take on that in the after the break or after the hour. But he wrote a column that appears most in MustRead and in the Alaska Landmine, the title of which is why we shouldn't combine the permanent fund accounts. This is a topic that we've talked about a lot on the show over the course of the last few weeks. It is the proposal by some, including the Permanent Fund Corporation, to consolidate the two earnings account or the two accounts that are set up by the Constitution for the permanent fund. One is the corpus And the second is the permanent fund earnings account, the account into which the earnings from the fund are put. The proposal by some is to consolidate those two in a way that would eliminate the protections that the Constitution creates for the permanent fund. The way the Constitution currently sets it up, the legislature can draw from the earnings reserve of the second account of the permanent fund. But if it runs through the earnings reserve, it can't get into the corpus. The corpus is constitutionally protected. The statute or the provisions of the Constitution say the legislature cannot appropriate from the permanent fund corpus. And so the legislature has a hard stop on what it can do past the earnings reserve. It can't keep going. What the proposal of merging those two accounts into the one account system is to open the door for the legislature to continue to make withdrawals from the permanent fund account, the singular permanent fund account, even though it's run through what it would have been in the old earnings account. It can continue to draw from the permanent fund, what would have been the old permanent fund corpus. Robb's point, and I think it's an excellent one, is summarized in this paragraph. It says the point of combining the accounts is state spending. The point of removing the floor, removing the protection, highlights the real reason we're trying to combine the accounts. It's not about managing the health of the fund; it's about managing the health of the spend. And his point is that by setting up a draw from the permanent fund, the combined permanent fund account, you have a steady stream of draws that are coming from the permanent fund. So even though you run through what would have been in the old permanent fund earnings account, you would have had to stop. With the one account system, you just continue to draw from the permanent fund, and you can start draining into the corpus. You can start pulling from the corpus as a result of merging the two accounts. And so Robb's point is, look, what they're really trying to do, the proponents of that is really trying to do, is to protect the spend, to protect the revenue stream, to protect government spending, instead of protecting the permanent fund, because you're setting up a situation in which you can run through the old earnings reserve account and continue on into the permanent fund corpus in a way you couldn't in the past. The current system, the current two account system, protects the permanent fund corpus. It protects the permanent fund. What Robb's point is the merging the two accounts together protects the spend, protects the revenue stream from the permanent fund, and diverts and changes what you're really trying to protect. It's a huge point. It's a hugely significant change in what you're doing with the old permanent fund. It's no longer permanent. I mean, it can be drained down if the spend is higher than the earnings coming into the fund. If you're taking more out through the draw than's coming into the fund through earnings, permanent fund is no longer permanent. I mean, it can be drained down as a consequence of the change. So they still want to call it the permanent fund, but it's no longer that. The other thing that really bothers me about this combination, not only do we no longer have a permanent fund, and not only have we changed the focus to focus on protecting the revenue, protecting the spend, as opposed to protecting the fund. The other thing that bothers me is we're hugely changing the incentives around the permanent fund. So currently, the incentive for the permanent fund corporation, though they're not living up to it very well, and we'll get into that in the third segment, but the incentive for the permanent fund corporation is to maximize earnings, is to optimize earnings, make sure that earnings are sufficient to at least to cover the draws from the fund, to make sure that earnings are strong, to build up the fund, to produce additional earnings to cover the needs that the legislature creates by drawing from the fund. The old PFD system did the same thing. It focused on earnings because permanent fund dividends came from earnings. And so people focused on earnings because that's what was going to drive the permanent fund dividend. The entire incentive system and the entire focus was on earnings. What happens when you merge the two funds together and you start focusing on the draw is the permanent fund corporation really no longer has its primary focus on earnings.
Right.
It can go on autopilot because the legislature is drawing 5% from the permanent fund, regardless of what the earnings levels are. And so they're not focused as much on earnings as they have been in the past. The public, because, and this is a problem with the way that we've started to treat the PFD over the last few years as sort of the leftover, but the public is no longer as focused on earnings because earnings are no longer driving the dividend. Now the dividend's being set by the legislature out of the draw on a sort of on an ad hoc basis. So the focus comes off earnings, and that is a complete change from what the fathers of the permanent fund had in mind. They had in mind keeping the permanent fund corporations focused on earnings, maximizing earnings every day, keeping the earnings going.
And keeping the people engaged with that, because obviously that's their stake in the game. And now that it was taken out of the people's hands, and I mean, it's a brilliant observation, because I hadn't even considered that, changing the focus of the permanent fund corporation itself. When they had to answer to the people for, the size of the dividend, they had to focus on those earnings, and now not so much.
Well, and the change from the 2-account system to the 1-account system will be to even lessen the legislature's focus on earnings. I mean, under the current system, under the 2-account system, the legislature at least keeps a focus on earnings, because that's what drives the earnings reserve, and that's what drives what's available to them to use to help supplement revenues for the for state spending. If you merge the 2 accounts together and you have just a 5% draw, regardless of what the earnings are, then the legislature doesn't get as concerned about earnings anymore, because they're going to get their 5% regardless out of the combined accounts. It changes the dynamic, and it changes the incentives. And incentives, I mean, we talk about incentives a lot on the program. Incentives are hugely important. And so it changes the incentives for the legislature, what they focus on. They only focus on, are we going to get our 5% or not? And it changes the incentives for the permanent fund corporation, because nobody's looking over their shoulder anymore, focusing on earnings. They're just focusing on whether that 5%, whether they've got enough liquidity in the combined permanent fund account to fund that 5%. So I think it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, and I don't want to minimize that problem. It's a huge problem to change the focus of the permanent fund from focusing on the health of the permanent fund itself to just the earnings stream. But it also changes the incentives in a way that I think is ultimately detrimental to both Alaskans and to the legislature and to everybody else. We're no longer, the permanent fund corporation isn't sitting there every day, as it should be at least, sitting there every day saying, how do we maximize earnings? They can go on autopilot and say, look, you're going to get your 5% regardless. Doesn't really matter what our earnings are. Well,
we can already see some of the arguments that are stacking up. And in fact, some of the people I had last time we had Robb on, I got a message from Joshua Church, who had written that opinion piece in the News Miner about how, you've got it all wrong. This is needed because stability and some other things. And I think we're going to have Joshua on to give his side of the story. But again, there seems to be a lot of trust us, we know what we're doing kind of thing going on here. And yet we've seen the track record, and we know that it's not great. I mean, Robb's piece here in the Landmine specifically talks about how, the first thing that they did was try and pull the entire balance of the ERA in 2019 into the principal to call it inflation proofing, which would have zeroed the fund out and basically mean that they would have to turn it into one fund right then and there just to be able to operate government. So I don't trust the people in the government that they're going to do the right thing, that the people in the legislature are going to do the right thing and this has always been my challenge, even between you and me, when we talk about taxes, is I am not confident that they will have fiscal restraint when any kind of new money gets dumped on them, because they're trying to spend everything and then some anyway, right? That's why there has to be some kind of spending limit or cap.
Well, and we've talked about incentives there also. I mean, we've talked about why it's important about who you're taxing, who you're raising the revenues from. You want to raise revenues from the people who have the ability to push back on spending and say, look, we're not going to provide you any more money because you're spending too much. And the problem with using PFD as your revenue source is the only people you're really hurting are middle and lower income Alaska families who don't have much political power. Even though it's 80% of Alaska families, they really don't have a whole lot of political power. So if you're going to tax, if you're going to have additional revenues, you want to focus it to create an incentive on people to push back on spending, the people who have the political power to push back on spending. Here, you want to focus the incentives on earnings. Keep the entire focus on earnings every day, day in and day out. And what this does, what merging into the one account system is lessen that focus on earnings a lot, because they're going to get 5% no matter what the earnings are. If the earnings are 3%, they still get 5%. If the earnings are 2%, they still get 5%. Right. You want to keep the focus on earnings to make sure that the Permanent Fund Corporation is maximizing earnings.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We got more coming up. We're going to move on to number 2 here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break. We're going to continue here. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. I don't know. Facebook is acting really weird today for me. It will not load completely. I have no pictures or anything else. So I don't know if you guys are having a hard time or a good time, or if it's all working for you. But for me, it's acting really funky. Bruce Tangeman comments in the chat room. And wow, he agrees with me. Unfortunately, the PFD variable will solve itself next year. The PFD we get next month will be the last PFD we receive. The question will shift to if the POMV draw can cover the budget next year. I mean, I can already see this is an argument that's going to be set up. But again, this is the argument that they've been trying to get set up for the last 4 or 5 years now. And I agree with Bruce. I think this will be the last PFD we see, because next year, $2 billion deficit, potentially more. They could take all of the PFD and they still don't have a fraction of what they need to cover the gap. Brad?
Well, yeah. I mean, I disagree with Bruce on that. I do think the PFD will continue. I think the pushback on the elimination of the PFD would be serious, but it won't be a lot. I mean, it'll be a sort of a token PFD to say, yes, we still have one, as opposed to what the founders of the permanent fund, the 1981 provision on permanent fund dividends intended. It'll just be a percent of that. But here's the deal: the merging the two accounts together will, I mean, the eliminating the PFD and eliminating the basis for the PFD and earnings has detracted from the incentives for Alaskans to focus on earnings. Merging the two accounts together will detract from eliminate the focus of the legislature on focusing on earnings. And so it will just be we will just be focused on the automatic pilot of, do we get our 5% draw? Have they created enough liquidity in the permanent fund to get our 5% draw? We really don't care about what they're earning. Just give us our 5% draw. And it'll be like a frog in boiling water, right? I mean, the 5%, you're earning 3%, you take out 5%, it'll start on this decline. Permanent Fund Corporation or the Permanent Fund balance will start on this decline, but it'll be a little bit every year. And so, like the frog in the boiling water, you won't really notice it for a while, and by then it'll be too late. So we need to keep the focus on earnings, and we've eliminated that with respect to the permanent fund dividend, because we're not basing the permanent fund dividend on earnings anymore. We at least need to keep the legislature's focus on earnings to generate the focus that you have enough, that you're generating enough in the earnings reserve account so that we can support government. If you eliminate that, if you eliminate the two account system, merge the two accounts so that there's no longer a concern about whether or not we have enough in the earning enough to have enough in the earnings reserve, then the entire focus on earnings goes away, and we just start riding the chute down.
Bruce follows up with that. He says, well, how will it be funded then? ERA overdraw, drain ADIA, drain PCE. We're running out of funding sources. I mean, yeah, I think that's the whole point here, is that we are running out of funding sources and they're going to find a way. Brad, you might be right. Maybe it's a token PFD, but I mean, how do they justify that? If they're still $1 billion upside down, do they just say, sorry, Buttercup, that's how it works? There's not even a $300 PFD in your future.
I think they want to keep I think they will want to keep the illusion of a PFD, even though it's not what the founders intended. The illusion of a PFD going, that you're getting, Alaskans are getting a share of the commonly held resource wealth. I think they'll want to keep the illusion of that going, but they'll need to find other funding sources, and hopefully the focus is on finding funding sources that generate the incentives to push back on spending. That's what we don't have. We don't have that right now. We don't have people pushing back on spending.
Brian calls it the Loot the Permanent Fund Act. Yeah, that's my favorite right there. That's it right there. Some truth bombs. All right, here we go. We're going to rejoin the radio and get ready to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're continuing now. The weekly top three continues. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We move on from the Permanent Fund Corporation. We'll be back to that. We'll be back. Brad's next topic, Pikka is not going to save us. I mean, we keep hearing about this. We've had several politicians talk about this on the program recently, that all this new oil and everything else, but it's not gonna save you. Brad, give us the full rundown here.
So there's been recently a lot of news about Santos's Pikka project. There was a headline in the ADN this past week: Alaska's biggest oil project in decades is set to begin production ahead of schedule. And there's a lot of excitement about the additional oil. The implication of that, I mean, what most people are reading into those headlines, more revenues for the state. The state will be saved. We'll have the additional oil production will result in additional revenues. A big part of the revenues that people associate with oil, part of it comes from royalties, but a big part of the additional revenues that people associate with oil come from production taxes, and the receipt of production taxes as a result of production of additional oil. That's how we've sort of set up state revenues. A significant sum of it comes from royalties, but historically the most significant part of it has come from production taxes. Interestingly enough, at the same time as all these headlines were coming out from the press and otherwise about, Pikka is going to start up early and there's all this production coming on, DOR Department of Revenue released a new report focused on Pikka and focused on the revenues, and in part focused on the revenues that are going to be generated from Pikka. And this report, the August report on Pikka is fascinating in terms of the breakdown of what revenues are actually going to come from Pikka and the timing of those revenues. The report on page 8, for those who want to read it for themselves, the report on page 8 dives into revenues, and it says, and here's the key provisions of it. Oil production is going to begin in FY27, and what the news reports now are reporting is oil production may even begin at the tail end of FY26, but full oil production is going to begin in FY27. 27. And then the Department of Revenue report goes on to say production tax revenue begins in FY34. So we're going to have first oil in 27, but production tax revenue isn't going to begin in 34. You know, back when we did SB 21, the claim of the proponents of SB 21 and the hope and the expectation of the proponents of SB 21 was, look, as oil production, we're going to generate additional oil production. And as oil production goes up, Alaskans are going to share in the benefits of that oil production right alongside the producers. And so it's in Alaskans' interest to change the tax structure, to have oil revenues, to have oil production go up, so oil revenues to the state will go up with it. That happened plus or minus through the 20 teens. But as we've gotten into the 2020s, there's been this big division between what that expectation, that is oil production climbs, so will oil revenues, between the expectation of that and the reality of that. And the Pikka analysis sort of brings that home. It says oil production begins in 2027. Production taxes don't even begin to have an impact until 2034, 7 years later. And even then, production taxes aren't at full force. In FY 2039, the remaining carry forward annual losses are insufficient to bring production tax to the minimum tax floor. And from FY 24 onwards, no carried forward annual losses remain. What that's really saying is, look, production taxes do begin in 2034, but they're not at full force because you still have a bunch of credits that are lowering the production taxes, not just the credits that most people have talked about in the last decade, which are tied to price, tied to oil price. These are credits that are helping to significantly reduce production tax responsibility. So we have production starting in FY27. We don't have the production tax even begin until FY34, and it doesn't kick into full force until FY39 and FY40. What's happened during that time period? During the initial stages of Pikka, production is building up. It plateaus for a few years, and then it starts coming down. By the time the production taxes kick into full force, the production is on significant decline. And so once Alaska only starts collecting full production taxes in 2039 and 2040, only starts collecting full production taxes once production is in significant decline. So what we're seeing here is, in the Pikka analysis, I think really brings home what's going on with SB 21 in the current decade. We've had a division between the expectation that as production climbs, Alaskans will benefit along with producers. We've had a division between that expectation and the reality, which as production increases, producers are benefiting. Federal government's actually benefiting through federal corporate income taxes, but Alaska isn't benefiting until much later on and until production started in decline. I think it captures the brokenness or the way in which SB 21 has become broken in the current decade in a very significant way.
But we keep hearing I'm sorry. I'm not trying not to laugh here, but we keep hearing the politicians saying this is the answer. I mean, look, they're all pointing to Pikka and all these new fields and the reserves and all these new projects, and they're going to save us. But again, even if production starts next year, it'll be what, 10 years and 9 years before we really see the full revenue from that. How do we survive the next 10 years at $1.7 billion per year average shortfall to make it to that point? I mean, that's the question. I think you're right. This is obviously showing exactly where our problems are in this SB 21. I mean, shouldn't we be opening up this is always what happens, right? With Alaskan tax schemes, whether it was the original or ELF or ACEs or SB 21, we have all these aspirational goals that it's all going to work out. And then we're like, oh, it's not working as intended. And we have to come back. A lot of times we drag our feet on doing it because, well, we don't want the oil companies to be uncertain into what's going on. But it always ends up hurting somebody, usually us, the state, instead of the oil companies. But I mean, even when it was ELF, they drug their feet on this kind of thing. I mean, we've got to address this. If we can't just keep going on as like it'll correct itself. That's not how it works.
What the politicians are doing is they're capitalizing on the impression that was created back at the time SB 21 was passed, that it's a shared effort. It's a shared effort in terms of all these oil tax credits are going to be in there to incentivize investment. But once that investment starts paying off in terms of increased production, there's going to be a shared benefit. So it's okay to make these changes in oil taxes because we're investing. All of us are investing in the future. The producers are investing in the future, and Alaskans are investing in the future through taking a reduction in oil taxes in order to spur this investment, because at the end of the rainbow, there's going to be this shared benefit. As production increases, Alaskans will increase, or revenues will increase as well. And politicians are still playing on that. Jim Jansen, in an op-ed about a year ago on the ADN, still played on that. Said, oh, well, just hang on. When production comes, when production increases, Alaskans are going to benefit alongside the industry. Well, that's not happening. That's not the way SB 21 is playing out with all of the various provisions in it. It's playing out so that there's a division that's occurring as production starts. Producers are getting the benefit of the increased production while the state is waiting for, let's get these timeline rights. First oil begins in FY 27. Let's just focus on what Department of Revenue said. First oil begins in FY 27. Production tax revenue doesn't begin until FY 34, 8 years later. And it's not even, and production tax doesn't kick in fully until FY 2040, which is 13, 14 years after the date of first oil, when we're already in production decline. So what's happened is the reality of what Alaskans were sold on is different than what Alaskans were sold on, than the projection of what Alaskans were sold on. Shared sacrifice, shared benefit. It's turned out it's shared sacrifice, still sacrifice for Alaskans for 14 years, a decade and a half after first oil. And that's just not what SB 21 was sold on. It's not the expectation that was there when SB 21 was driven. And Pikka, this analysis of what's going on in the Pikka field, is just an absolute demonstration of where that's failing.
What do you think the chances are that they actually address this, though? I mean, we've already seen the pushback on any kind of suggestion that maybe we should be looking at. I mean, we saw it when the Fiscal Policy Working Group came out and said, well, one of the things that they recommended was a revision to the oil taxes. And they're like, whoa, wait a second. We can't do that. So we got the Democrats and the big government Republicans on the one side, pushing all this government spend. But even the fiscal conservatives on the other side are saying, well, we can't look at oil taxes. That would be dangerous. I mean, again, we're supposed to be looking at these things. If they're not working as intended, we need to fix them.
Yeah. Well, it depends on whether politicians. So politicians are pushing for the source of revenue that has the weakest resistance, right? And so it's initially been the PFD, as we got, well, it was initially the savings accounts, the SBR and the CBR. Those were supposed to be there for, for pulling down when we have bad times. So they had the force of least resistance. So politicians went for them. And then politicians went for the PFD because it only affects middle and lower income Alaska families. And so we'll come up with all these rationalizations why we're taking it. But the focus is on middle and lower income Alaska families, not the ones who donate to us and not the ones who have the loudest voice in the press and in the communities. So they take from them. Now what we're really seeing, I mean, this merges the first segment with the second segment. Now what we're really seeing is, we're going to need more revenues. So let's merge the two accounts in the permanent fund together so that we can continue the permanent fund draw regardless of what actual earnings are, regardless of the permanent fund corporation's performance. That's sort of a, and we'll doctor it up in nice pictures and nice rationalizations for why we're doing it. But the real intent is to get at the permanent fund corpus, start draining the permanent fund corpus if they need it. That's the point of least resistance. So, we're just going to continue to find what the source of least resistance is as we go. The oil companies put up a lot of resistance. They fund a lot of campaigns. They put up a lot of resistance. And so, they may be toward the end. But in terms of delivering on what Alaskans were promised back in 2013 with SB 21, we're failing. We're failing to do what the promise was in SB 21 of shared sacrifice, shared benefit. It's turned out to be shared sacrifice, and then Alaskans sacrifice some more as the oil companies start to benefit.
Some crazy stuff. All right, we're continuing. Brad Keithley, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. One more segment dead ahead, number 3 of the weekly top 3. Don't forget to come out and check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. We'll continue with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Bruce said, I recall Bert, I'm assuming he's saying Bert Stedman. I recall Bert saying, you got to open up the books and look under the hood every 10 years or so to make sure things are working as hoped. The last tax change was MAPA in 2014, 11 years ago. I mean, that SB 21 was also in that era. But yeah, I mean, that should be what it is. You need to look under the hood every 10 years or so to make sure things are working as hoped. And obviously, they're not. Obviously, if they're going to put production on and you're not going to see any revenues till really 9 years later, that's obviously not working as intended. Well, I guess unless you intended to give away the farm for Alaskans, Brad, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at now.
Yeah, just to make it clear, SB 21 and MAPA are the same thing. Make Alaska.
Make Alaska
more Alaska Production Act or something like that.
Okay, all right.
It's what those MAPA. It tends to be what those in the Parnell administration call it. SB 21 tends to be what everybody else, what everybody else calls it. But yes, I mean it is the producers. The producers made an excellent point in the late 2000s and the early 2010s when we saw investment going like everywhere else but Alaska because we had ACES at the time, and ACES was an overreach. And so we saw investments start back into the oil industry in a big way in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. Alaska wasn't getting any of it. And so the battle cry of producers at the time was, look, we need to re-examine what we did then just 8 years ago in 2006. We need to re-examine what we did with ACES and reset the playing field so that we have this shared position. We have a shared sacrifice. with the goal of getting additional production. And then we have a shared benefit coming out of that additional production. And so, yes, I mean, Bert's right. We need to look at these things every so often. Producers aren't shy about saying that we need to look at it when they're on the downside of the break. Consumers, Alaskans should not be shy about saying that it's time to reopen it when they're on the downside of the break.
But here's a typical response from a lot of those folks. This is Teresa. Attacking the renewable resource major industry in the state makes zero sense. Who's attacking? We're not attacking. We're saying you're the owner, Teresa. You own it, and you're not getting paid on it for 9 years after the production starts. That's not working as intended. Are you attacking when you're saying you need to get your fair share? I mean, that's the problem. But this is going to be the reaction from a lot of folks on the right, is that, oh, we're attacking a major industry. No, we're not. We're trying to make sure that the limited resource, that we get the maximum yield for the minimum for the resource that we own. That's what the Constitution says.
We're trying to fulfill the arguments of 2013 and 2014, shared sacrifice, shared benefit. That's what we're trying to do. We're not attacking the industry. We're not saying, hey, overreach, give us, like ACES did, give us the bulk of it. You make the investment, but give us the bulk of the benefit. That's not what anybody's trying to do here. It's not what we're trying to do. What you're trying to do is say, look, let's fulfill the commitment. Let's fulfill the arguments of 2013 and 2014 of shared sacrifice, shared benefit. It's time for the shared benefit to kick in, but it's not kicking in. A disproportionate amount of the benefit is going to the producers as opposed to being shared with the state, the resource owner. That's what the objective was of 2013 and 2014. So this is not, let's go back to ACES where we grab all the benefit and leave none to the producers. This is, look, let's achieve the arguments of 2013 and 2014. Let's go in and get and share the benefits going forward in a timely manner. Let's not push the state's benefits as the current law is doing. Let's not push the state's benefits, 13 and 14 years out. Let's make sure we achieve them at the same time as the producers is achieving them.
Teresa clarifies that she said renewable resource. She was talking about the fishing industry. Okay. But again, it was a perfect example of what you're going to hear from some of the Republicans, is that we're attacking the major industry resource out there. And then Frank says, he again quotes the next thing you're going to hear. Do you want state services or do you want a PFD, quote unquote? I mean, that's going to be the next argument, right? I mean, isn't that what we've heard so far? Do you want a PFD or do you want taxes? But now it'll be, do you want state services or do you want a PFD? I mean, these are the same kind of ridiculous arguments we've heard time and again. 30 seconds, Brad.
We're talking about two entirely different things. We're talking about getting Alaska's fair share of the revenue. We can argue about where it goes later on, but the constitutional obligation is to get Alaska's fair share of the revenue. And what's happening 10 years on from the passage of an act that said shared benefit, shared resource, what's happening 10 years on is we're not getting the shared benefit.
Here we go. Let's jump into it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and the weekly top 3. We're going to continue here. We're moving back over to the Permanent Fund Corporation, not now on the, it's like this is a never-ending story, man, but not on the combining of it, but on the performance of it, which Brad touched on as well in that first part. He references back to the MustRead article that came out here just a couple of days ago, saying that the permanent fund hit records. But even as they did that, the PF, that we're seeing smaller dividends. And although Suzanne Downing makes a comment that, this move to try and consolidate the fund could be dangerous, they are showing that they hit records at $85 billion. Brad?
Yeah, here's the problem with MustRead, and it's sort of the same problem that we just talked about with the ADN when they were saying, "Oh, Pikka additional production, great thing," without looking at the underlying revenues, without looking at what's happening from the revenue side, the revenue split side. MustRead is sort of becoming the mouthpiece for the permanent fund for the Permanent Fund Corporation. Look at us; we achieved a record level in terms of the value of the permanent fund. We've hit $85 billion, but MustRead is not looking into how the Permanent Fund Corporation's performance and whether the $85 billion should be a lot more. As we've made the point on previous shows, it should be. We could be in the $120 billion range now if we had invested differently than the Permanent Fund Corporation's been investing. So just like, the focus on the ADN is look into the revenue split. Don't just buy off on the argument oil production is going up, so we're all going to be happy. Don't just buy off on that. Look into the revenue split. The same thing with respect to MustRead and the other news sources that say, oh, the permanent fund hit a record level. Look into the details and see whether there's something not as rosy going on. And that's certainly the case with the Permanent Fund Corporation. We've talked about this on the show recently a number of times. We'll talk about it again. But when you look at the Permanent Fund Corporation's performance, they haven't matched. Not only have they not matched earnings, not only have they not generated sufficient earnings to cover the POMV draw that the legislature's been making, but they haven't even matched the performance that they would achieve if they, instead of spending $1 billion on management fees, they instead put the Permanent Fund Corporation investment or the Permanent Fund investment on passive investments and achieve the returns that their passive investment benchmark is achieving.
Let me rewrite the headline for you. Instead of Alaska Permanent Fund hits $85 billion record, even as Alaskans see smaller dividends, it should have been Alaska Permanent Fund hits records $85 billion, but it could have been so much more, right? I mean, that really should be the headline.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it should be. And that's and what we're not doing, what Alaskans aren't doing, what the Alaska news media isn't doing is digging in, just like we're not digging into the revenue side on oil revenues. They're not digging into the side. They're not digging into the Permanent Fund Corporation and looking at it and looking at the Permanent Fund Corporation's performance. It's not that it's difficult to do. The Permanent Fund Corporation itself monthly publishes its investment results, and it compares its own investment results against 3 benchmarks that it's created. So, you would think they would have created them to show the Permanent Fund Corporation in a positive light. But the Permanent Fund Corporations over the last 3 years, each of the last 3 years, the Permanent Fund Corporation's performance has been lower from what they've actually done. The Permanent Fund Corporation's performance has been lower from what they've actually done compared to their own passive benchmark, compared to putting it on autopilot. And it's been significantly less. The deficiencies have been 3%, 4% of the of a return on the fund's performance. So it's what we're doing is we're buying off on these headlines that people are creating and saying, oh, we must be in good shape because look at, oil's going up, oil production's going up, so we must be better off in terms of revenues, without looking at what's actually going on in oil taxes. And Permanent Fund Corporation is saying, oh, look, we achieved a higher level than we had before. Well, it's not the level that your own benchmark says you should be achieving. And it's certainly not the level you could be achieving if you took Warren Buffett's advice and did a 90-10 split, a 90% investment in the S&P 500 and a 10% in the bond market to provide a hedge. You're not achieving what your own benchmarks and what objective benchmarks out there in the world are telling you should be achieving. You're leaving money on the table. And this is the problem with merging this. To go back to the first segment, this is the problem with in spades that shows up if you merge the two accounts together. Nobody cares about earnings after you merge the two accounts together, because you're always going to get the 5% draw, regardless of what the permanent fund corporation is doing. So we're not focusing enough on it now, although the information's out there that tells us we could. It's going to be even less. The problem's going to be even worse if we merge the two accounts together.
And of course, this is something that we've harped on. I brought it up to several candidates, and there's been kind of a glazed look of people's eyes. They're not paying attention to this part. You and I seem to be the only ones talking about this specific issue with the permanent fund and the earnings potential that's slipping between our fingers. You know, the cost of $1 billion in management fees every year to deliver subpar returns compared to their own passives, let alone to a Vanguard or an S&P 500, just to their own passive benchmarks, they're falling behind. And everybody looks at you like, what? I mean, and as you said, the mainstream media, between this and the whole Pikka and other field things with the revenues, I mean, nobody's digging into this. Where is the doggedness and the determination to get to the bottom of these numbers? It's, you know, like you said, it's not hard to figure out when you actually do the work and look at it, and you've done all the work to begin. Somebody could write a story with you helping them, just going back to your articles and saying, this is what Brad Keithley said. Shouldn't we be discussing this? This is crazy.
Here's the problem with the legislature. The legislature is entirely focused on spending. They all get in on, oh, we ought to be spending on that, or we ought to be spending on that, or we ought to be not spending on this or not spending on that. They're elected by constituencies that are focused on spending. Are you going to spend on me, or are you spending too much, or you're not spending? We really don't have anybody in the legislature that I can identify who focuses on the revenue side, who says, are we getting what we should? Is the state getting what it should on the revenue side? We don't have any revenue focused legislators who are looking at the oil taxes and saying, wait a second, we're supposed to be getting this. This is what SB 21 was sold on. We're supposed to be, sharing in the benefit, but we're not. The benefits coming, years out. We don't have anybody focusing on the permanent fund revenue saying, are we getting the permanent fund revenue that we're deserves?
Well, this is what happens when you have a legislature that's focused completely on the spend. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, it's good to have you.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 dead ahead. We're going to do a little recap. We're going to talk a little bit about MustRead and some of the other stuff. And then we're going to finish up with Chris Story. Back with more right after this. Okay, Brad. Yeah, I mean, to me, this is astonishing that we don't have a media that is digging deeper into these. It's basically become a game of paraphrasing press releases at this point, right? There's no deeper analysis on any of this. The permanent fund not earning the right returns, the downsides of the combining of the funds, the few articles that we've seen, only opinion pieces have brought out the dangers of combining the funds, not the actual news articles said so-and-so on this side said it could open up the corpus or whatever. And of course, again, the Pikka and all the new field things, with SB 21 and basically saying, oh, look at this, we're safe, never looking at the actual analysis underneath. There's multiple problems here, but that's a real problem when it's not, we've got a media that's not informing the public as to both sides of the issues at that point.
Yeah. And MustRead, I mean, people will think about MustRead what they want, but MustRead's been pretty good about digging stuff out. But in this situation, MustRead is just accepting the press release from the Permanent Fund Corporation and just, in regurgitating it. Oh, look how great we are. Look, we got us to 85 billion. Don't look at the guy behind the curtain that could have got us to 125 billion. Don't worry about that. We got to 85 billion. Aren't we good? And that's we tend to, legislators, politicians in the state tend to accept revenues as they are. Whatever revenue reporting function or whatever revenue agency reports the number is, Well, that's the number. On the spending side, it's, oh no, we need to be spending more on K through 12, or we need to be spending more on corrections, or we need to be spending more on the university. Everybody gets excited on the spending side, but we don't have anybody who's digging in on the revenue side and said, wait a second, we should be getting a lot more revenue. If you believe the principles of SB 21, we should be getting a lot more revenue as oil production goes up, not less, which is what's happening with production taxes, or on the Permanent Fund Corporation. Look, the stock market's taken off. We should be getting a lot more revenue from our investment portfolio, not just mediocre, bouncing along, not even keeping up with the passive indices. We don't have anybody who's digging in on the revenue side, and that's a huge problem. It's as much not digging in on the revenue side is as much a problem as overspending is on the spending side. We've got a lot of people who focus on overspending. We have very few people who dig in on the under revenue side.
Yeah. Well, it's frustrating to watch and to see. Bruce Tangeman is going to give you the final thought here. He says, if it will only get worse in a couple of years once the ERA is overdrawn and drained just to balance the budget. Next up will be the legislature saying, start selling shares of Apple because you better have our POMV draw ready July 1st. Well, and of course, once the ERA is drawn and overdrawn and gone, then of course it's into the corpus and the seed corn, and then we face that doom loop of less money earning money. And so then we have less money in the earnings. So then the next year we have to take more of the seed corn and more, and it may be a 20-year cycle, but we'll drain that account down if that's what they do.
But the problem that Bruce is talking about there isn't just an overspending problem. The problem is an under revenue problem. The problem is the Permanent Fund Corporation is not earning what it could and should be in terms of the investment bundle that we've passed along to them. They're just sort of rocking along at a mediocre level and not investing and not focusing on the maximization of earnings. It's an under revenue problem as much as it's an overspending problem, and it's a problem that Alaskans should be focused on, because if you're not getting the revenue you should be getting out of oil, and you're not getting the revenue you should be getting out of the permanent fund, where does that pop up? Well, it pops up in terms of PFD cuts to generate there, and it pops up in terms of taxes down the road, because we're not getting the returns, we're not getting the revenue we need to get from our existing asset base. So it's an issue that people should be focused on. It's an issue I think politicians would benefit from focusing on, but it's one that politicians just aren't digging into.
How do we win, Brad? I mean, how do we get people to see this? How do we get people to pay? I mean, like I said, you and I are talking about it, but almost nobody else is talking about it. I mean, I can't think of another person. Like I said, all the politicians that I've talked to about it went, what? I mean, they're just like, they have very little. At least I guess Bernadette brought it up during our last conversation, because I've been talking to her about the permanent fund and the board and things like that. I mean, she's at least talking about it, but nobody else is. It's like this is a non-issue.
I mean, maybe it's becoming the same way that the education task or the education community is. You aren't spending enough for us. Why are you not spending enough? You're failing us. Maybe on the revenue side, it's you as a politician are failing us by not getting the maximum return out of our resources, either on oil, not going back to ACEs, just fulfilling the obligations, the commitments of SB 21. You're failing us by not, pushing the Permanent Fund Corporation or structuring the Permanent Fund Corporation in a way in which they earn the returns that they are capable of earning, should be earning, that the market's generating in terms of the investments. Maybe it's taking the same tactics that the corrections community does, or the university community does, or the K through 12 community does, and focusing it on the revenue side, accusing the politicians of shorting Alaskans by not focusing on getting the maximum return out of our asset base.
All right, Brad Keithley, thank you, my friend. As always, it's good to talk with you. We appreciate you coming on board. Thanks much. We'll talk to you soon.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Hour 2 is dead ahead. We'll be back with more right after this.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby. Live around the world on the interwebs at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Thank you for coming in and being part of it today on this Tuesday edition of the show. If you're just joining us, we just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets with the weekly top three. And it was more pain, man. It was more truth bombs being dropped on us that I wish we had my last question to Brad was, how do we win? How do we get people paying attention to this? These things specifically, and I'm talking about the rate of return in earnings from the permanent fund. I'm talking about the oil taxation scheme where, everybody's pointing to these new fields coming online and how they're going to save us, not realizing that it will be 9 years before we start seeing real revenue from any of these fields. And by the time it ramps up to full production, the fields will actually be in decline. And all these other topics that Brad and I continue to focus on. Nobody else is really picking up on that. And as I was just telling Brad during the break, this seems to be a failure in part of our local news media. They've gotten really good, it seems to me, my personal opinion, they've gotten really good at paraphrasing the press releases from the various entities and special interests out there, whether it's the majorities or the minorities or the Permanent Fund Corporation press releases or whatever. They've gotten good at that, but it seems like somewhere along the way they've lost their ability to dig into things and to come up with questions based on what they found. Now, one of the outlets that has been doing a pretty good job of this, they have their own biases, obviously, has been MustRead Alaska. And it has gotten stronger and stronger over the last 4 or 5 years as a standalone media outlet. Stopped being kind of a blog and more about news, granted with its own slant, but always, I thought, at least thoughtful and did some digging and did some things like that. Well, now the future on this is in question because Suzanne Downing, who was the founder of MustRead and the editor of MustRead Alaska, has now left. We mentioned it yesterday that I had just gotten notice that she had left, and whatever the reasons were. And then yesterday, the Alaska Landmine, Jeff Landfield, put out a story, which ironically enough, Suzanne Downing actually posted back to her own Facebook page, the landmine story. And as you know, that there's no love lost between Landfield and Suzanne Downing. Jeff Landfield writes, the landmine has confirmed that Suzanne Downing has left the conservative news site MustRead Alaska. Her departure stemmed from a disagreement with owner John Faulkner over a story about former Attorney General Treg Taylor's upcoming hearing at the APOC Commission that she refused to take down. Taylor, who recently resigned as Attorney General, will soon announce his campaign for governor, making him the 10th Republican in the race. Downing founded MustRead Alaska in 2015 to provide a conservative voice in Alaska's media landscape. She previously served as editor of the Juneau Empire, speechwriter for former Governor Parnell, communications director for the Alaska Republican Party. And then he goes into the story of how she sold MustRead to Alaska Gold Communications and remained on the board, but has continued to manage and provide the day-to-day content, and then talks about how her departure will be a major loss for the business. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. It's not clear who's going to take over the day-to-day operations for MustRead. Finding someone with the knowledge and skills to run the thing like her and who wants the job will be extremely difficult. It is one of the most widely read news sites in Alaska. And it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see. I will note that this morning, the headlines on MustRead are exactly what they were yesterday. And they just updated it. They just updated it. So apparently Suzanne Downing's resignation is, and I'll grab onto this here in just a second here, and we'll read through this. Suzanne Downing's comment when she reposted the landmine story was, on my own terms, integrity first. That's what she said when she posted the landmine story to her own Facebook page. And she has started another Facebook page, to which yours truly was invited to, which is at facebook.com/Suzanne Downing AK. Now, I can only assume that this is going to be a place where maybe she uses it as a clearinghouse for maybe a future. I don't know if she's going to continue. I'm assuming that she's probably going to continue, but we'll have to see. I imagine that whatever non-compete, since she sold the business 2 years ago and has been working, I imagine that any kind of major non-compete is going on there. But it's a loss. It is a real loss here to see this go down. I don't know how they're going to, they'll probably. I think their reaction here, and we're going to get into their to the response from MustRead themselves here, the corporate MustRead, to see what they have to say. But I can't imagine anybody with those kind of connections and dedication and stick-to-itiveness. It's not going to be easy to find somebody to replace that. Let me say that. Let's go over to since this is a brand spanking new response. It was not there 40 minutes ago. And let's see what MustRead has to say. Dear readers, our board of directors is saddened to announce the sudden resignation of our esteemed editor, Suzanne Downing, as she embarks on a new journey. She's been an integral part of our organization, bringing unmatched passion and dedication to her role. Her commitment to delivering insightful coverage of Alaska's news and issues has profoundly shaped our publication and earned the trust of our readers. We extend our deepest gratitude to Suzanne for her tireless efforts and for the lasting impact she's made on our team and the community. We wish her all the best in the future endeavors. As we wish Suzanne every success in her next chapter, we remain committed to prioritizing the high-quality, independent journalism that our readers rely on. The board of directors at MustRead is dedicated to promoting and protecting a free press and to delivering comprehensive reporting on issues that affect Alaska and our communities. Looking ahead, watch for new content sections that will focus on rural issues, faith, and family alongside the stories we've consistently covered. This refined focus is a direct response to feedback from our readers, ensuring that we cover stories that resonate with our audience. As we strive to enhance our service, we invite readers to share their suggestions and feedback. MustRead is committed to providing in-depth reporting on issues that impact Alaska and our community. We appreciate your ongoing trust and support as we continue our dedication to excellence. On behalf of the board of directors, Todd Lindley, Vice President, Alaska Gold Communications, publisher of MustRead Alaska. So they're immediately going to be changing and adding some things, which will be interesting. And I'm curious as to who, are the day-to-day operations going to be taken over by Todd, or is there somebody else that's going to come in or not? For me, this is going to be tough because there are a lot of great, if they can't keep up, that's going to make it tougher because there's a lot of good stories that came out of MustRead that we covered here on the program on a daily basis. The MustRead, ADN, and Alaska Beacon are the three big outlets that I continually pull stuff from on every day. We get KTUU, or we occasionally get the Peninsula Clarion or the News Miner or something else. But as far as the big three for me, it was always MustRead, the ADN, and the Alaska Beacon. So this will be interesting to watch, to see. It'll be interesting to see. And as I said, since Suzanne Downing already has, she's got another page going. I don't know what's going to happen there. I really don't know. I'm interested to see where things go from here. She has purchased she bought a home and moved to Skagway last year to be closer to her family. So I don't know if she'll be working out of there or doing whatever she does, but I just can't see somebody with the ethic and the passion for this. I can't just see them walking away and not doing something, you know what I mean? And not participating and not actually having a voice out there. So I'm hopeful that we will continue, and I'm hopeful that MustRead will continue to be stalwart in there. I hope this just gives us a fourth outlet that we can look to or count on for a lot of these news stories. So hopefully all these things work out. But yeah, this is a weird thing. And again, the commentary about her departure stemming from this disagreement with the owner about the Treg Taylor article, which we didn't talk about yesterday, and we should probably talk about today because it's an interesting piece, and it begs some questions. And that piece in MustRead is titled "Former Attorney General Asked for an Exemption from APOC Financial Disclosures in Advance of Entering the Race." And we'll get into some details on that here on the other side of this, and we'll talk a little bit about it. I've got it definitely raises some questions here. And I'm asking questions a lot. It seems like I'm asking a lot of questions about Attorney General Treg Taylor, or now former Attorney General Treg Taylor, I guess, since he's now stepped down. But this just raises more questions in the long run. And I don't know if what Landfield wrote is true or not. I don't know if there was a disagreement or what, but this story did pique my interest yesterday before the show, before we started, before we even got word that Suzanne was leaving. This story definitely, I was like, well, my eyebrows were raised like, whoa, somebody's, a lot of good info here. So we're going to get into that here in just a bit, and we will continue in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more in just a moment. We're going to ask, what is former Attorney General Treg Taylor asking for from APOC? And we'll get into that here in just a minute. Back with more right after this. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, let me get back to some of your comments. Check out Craig Medred. What's Craig Medred have to say? Let me see. Was there anything? Medred hasn't had anything to say for. He hasn't. Maybe just in general. Is that what you're talking about? Follow Craig Medred in general. No, I mean he's got some good stuff. We've had Craig on the program before. I think he's done some good work out there. Let me go back to some of the comments here. Let's see what David says, must read Alaska and Gold Communications, just another circular firing squad. I don't know. I don't know anything about that, but Cindy says, must read story about her departure is so PC. I'm sure that there's more to the story and I hope the truth surfaces. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes those things are ugly when they leave. But Miguel says, my belief is she wanted to tell the truth and they were trying to stop her. Yeah. Let's see. Terry says she thinks Must Read is protecting Treg Taylor and Suzanne wasn't having any. From somewhere in Alaska, per Suzanne, says Terry. Terry also says she thinks that David Ignill's articles had a lot to do with it. That was a lot of pressure. Well, we'll see what happens here. It would be interesting to see if there's a non-compete clause and when it expires. I agree with you on that, David. That's the first. Having been the victim of a non-compete clause in my career, I will tell you that is definitely not a fun time. But again, Landfield saying that her departure stemmed from a disagreement with the owner over a story about Attorney General Treg Taylor's upcoming hearing at the APOC that she refused to take down. And that's a story we're going to dive into here in a minute, which to me raises some questions. The story raises some questions. And maybe as Terry said, maybe it was some of the David Ignell stuff as well that was causing, because that was also about Treg Taylor. I mean, with this kind of baggage going into it, I don't know how Taylor expects to get any kind of traction on this stuff. I really don't. With 10 Republicans in the race, what do you think that you have to offer that the other 9 haven't offered up at this point? Since you're so late to the game, I just don't even know at this point. What is it that you offer that the others don't at this point? But we'll see what happens. I'll be watching to see where Suzanne comes out of, because I mean I will be following. I guarantee you I will be following, because I depend on, those kind of locally sourced Alaska news stories. And, she's got all the connections and everything else. Doesn't mean that I'm going to stop reading or using Must Read. It just means that I will have another outlet to use if she decides to jump into the fray. And maybe it can't happen. Maybe it can't happen for, I don't know, 90 days, 120 days, 6 months. I don't know. But when she does start up, I will be there. I will be there listening closely. Has anyone said that he is entering the governor's race, Treg Taylor? Well, since he is appealing to APOC on this has been in the works for a long time, right? I mean, there's been a lot of rumors that he was going to jump in. And because he's appealing to APOC on this financial disclosure, I'm assuming that's a pretty good indication that he wants to run, Chris. So we'll we'll get into this here and jump into it right now. And then we'll finish up with Chris. How about that? Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Listen to it.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay. So this apparently is the story that caused the departure of Suzanne Downing from MustRead, Alaska. That's according to the Alaska landmine. Now, some people close to this said that it was not as contentious, that the departure was not as contentious, I think, as Jeff Landfield is making it out to be. This is what some of the sources that I've talked to. I talked to a bunch of folks yesterday. But that this was more of this was the straw. Right. It was probably not as contentious, but she was probably on her way out already. Landfield reported that she had sold all of her shares of the company to the owner in 2024 and had continued on as managing director as she had said she would for a time. But maybe this just kind of accelerated that timeline. I don't know. But here's the story. The story reads, former Attorney General asked for exemption from APOC financial disclosures in advance of entering the race. Treg Taylor had asked the Alaska Public Offices Commission for an exemption in filing certain financial disclosures. At issue is Taylor's extensive rental business. He and his wife own Inlet Towers in Anchorage, which was a hotel at one point, but I believe was now being converted into long-term, into apartments, I believe. According to correspondence between Taylor, his wife Jody, and APOC, the Taylors own 234 rental units, most of which have been previously managed by a third-party company. State law requires public officials to disclose all income over $1,000, including the name of tenants who pay that amount or more annually, and the exact rental payments and the name of the property management if it is not the official themselves or a family member. Taylor, while still Attorney General, submitted a request for an exemption on March the 17th, which was the deadline for annual disclosures, citing the cumbersome nature of manually entering hundreds of rental income records into APOC's electronic filing system. He noted that while other sections of the disclosure form allow for file uploads, the rental income section does not. He wrote, my filing in regards to rental income would be extensive due to the number of tenants and the turnover among tenants, and would take a significant amount of time to enter by hand. My request for an exemption waiver would be until the functionality for uploading a file for rental income is available, as it is in other sections of the filing. I believe that APOC staff has expressed interest in adding the option to upload rental income as a file. I certify that all the facts stated in this exemption waiver request are true. I will submit my 2024 public official filing to the best of my ability without the information which is subject of this exemption waiver request. APOC, though, set aside that request during their busiest filing season, and then it resurfaced in July after the staff contacted the Taylors, who said that Jody, Treg's wife, manages the property. They advised that while exemptions from electronic filing can be granted, the law does not allow exemption from the disclosure itself. They went on to say, your exemption request should be submitted as a request for exemption from electronic filing, not just an exemption for filing itself. And it should be completed. Your request should also have included the information or statement that you're seeking exemption from reporting in an alternative format. So they asked Taylor to provide the rental income data in an alternative format, like a spreadsheet, on late July, but no disclosure has been made. So in its recommendations, APOC emphasized that disclosure is the core intent of Alaska's ethics laws, particularly in high-ranking officials like the Attorney General, and said exempting the electronic disclosure of a filer's sources of income because the filer finds APOC's system to be inconvenient places a burden upon the citizens who use these disclosures to ensure transparency. So the commission is expected to consider whether a limited exemption should be allowed at its meeting tomorrow, given the unusual volumes of Taylor's rental holdings and the lack of upload functionality in APOC systems. Now, this is the conundrum is this, so this is what Suzanne finishes with. Taylor's handling of the disclosure may draw scrutiny as he positions himself to run for governor. Personal financial disclosures have discouraged many business people from running for office, and some may ask why Taylor, as Attorney General, should get an exemption on his public official financial disclosure. And then somebody else in the comments makes an interesting point to say, if you've got, if these are cumbersome, yes, it sounds like it's very cumbersome, but can't you act like you have to do all this yourself? I mean, can't you just hire somebody for data entry to enter the data entry? I mean, what's going on here? Well, I mean, I understand that it's cumbersome and onerous and everything else, but wouldn't you just think that you could, you're not doing this all by yourself? Hire somebody. I mean, have your campaign pay for somebody. You pay for experts to help you with your campaign, including APOC filings. Why not just pay a data entry person to enter all that stuff in, or provide them with a spreadsheet? Are you saying you don't have a spreadsheet of this? It's concerning. I mean, it really, again, it raises questions. I mean, again, my first question, first and foremost, is there's already 9 people in the race. Did we really need for you to jump in here at this point and be number 10? Did you think that you were going to be so groundbreaking that this is what was going to happen? I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm looking forward to talking to Treg and to Adam Crum, because I want to know what is it that they bring to the table that's so different from everybody else, right? What is it that you bring to the table that's so different from everybody else? But the fact that he's asking for this exemption when, I mean, I don't think, I mean, again, either gut it up and put them in yourself, or use your campaign funds to hire an expert to file these things for you. That's part of the campaign. That's a legitimate expense. Why wouldn't you just do that? Pay somebody for data entry? Or is it that you don't, I mean, and again, this is not just an exemption for the way of filing. He wants an exemption to, he's asking for a complete exemption from the filing itself, not from just an alternative method. So it's interesting to see. But this apparently, as is being reported by the Landmine, this apparently was the main reason why Suzanne is leaving. Apparently pushback over this story. And as somebody said in the chat room, I think it was Terry in the chat room, that between this and the David Ignell stories about the grand juries and the Ketchikan police chief and Treg Taylor and that whole thing, I think that this may have been, again, the final straw on both sides of the mat here. I don't know. I'm trying to pick through the pieces from the outside looking in. All I know is I hope, one, that MustRead remains true to its course, because I think it's a great news outlet. And like I said, it's one of my go-tos. And I hope that Suzanne lands on her feet, and maybe she'll add to the mix with continued commentary beyond that. I hope so. I mean, again, I'd love to have an additional news source on top of that, but we'll have to see where this goes in the end. And somebody also said that the response from MustRead on her resignation was very PC, to which I would agree. I mean, I think, but I think it has to be, right? You can't, I think it has to be kind of PC in that regard. And she's remained mum. Again, the most that I've seen her said, the most that I have seen her say was essentially on my own terms. When she quoted the landmine article, that was her comment, was on my own terms. So again, I think that's great. But we'll see how it all plays out in the end. We'll see what the whole final thing looks like in the very end. But I have a feeling that when it's all said and done, we'll probably have an additional outlet. We'll have the MustRead will still be here, and I hope just as good. And we'll have a new outlet with Suzanne Downing as well. And, that she'll be at least contributing occasionally out there as well. And we'll see where it goes from there. But that's the down and dirty, whatever that means. That's the latest and greatest on this. But definitely a loss for MustRead, and hopefully they continue and stay strong over this. And again, best of wishes to Suzanne as she continues out on her end as well. All right. Well, we're coming up in the break, and somebody in the chat room just said APOC is a pain in the butt for everyone. Put up or get out. Yeah. I mean, again, it just raised so many questions. Like, what? This just seems like it's 200. He said 234, right? That was the number of rental units or something. Okay, it's 234 entries. Is it a pain in the butt? Yes. But is that a couple hours work? Yes. And even if you do have tenants moving in and out and you have to change, that's just kind of part. And again, I don't see the big deal about it. That's the thing. I don't see the big deal over, that. Why would you file a anyway? I just have questions. It does raise a lot of questions, and maybe that was the point of contention. Maybe that, they don't want maybe they don't want questions being raised. But yeah, I'm with you on that. All right. We're gonna go to break. We got Chris Story coming up here in just a moment. He's going to give us the weekly uplift with our life coaching lesson and positivity boost, which we I guess we need now after all this stuff. And then we'll continue. Coming up on tomorrow's program, we're going to be talking with Kendall Cruz in hour 1. She's running for the school board in the Matsu. And then in hour 2, we're going to be talking with JT McComas Rowe, who is running for the assembly in Fairbanks. So that's a big start to our series with local candidates for local office, school board, city councils, and assemblies, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all coming up. All right, we got to go. We'll return in just a bit. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break, waiting for Chris Story to join up with us here. Let me get to some of the comments in the chat room. Terry says, "Can we trust MustRead now?" I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, just because Suzanne doesn't, there's lots of great contributors there. I mean, David Boyle is in the chat room. He's contributed. Kevin McCabe, Robb Myers, Ben Carpenter. Yeah, again, Tawny says some of the other contributors, such as Ben Carpenter. Yes. I mean, so I think that there's good info there. The question is, who will helm the ship, right? Who's going to hold it all together and be that driving force like Suzanne was? So, I mean, I think, I think that yes, MustRead is still a trusted source. I hope they can hold it together. That's my hope right now. Melissa says APOC is archaic. They should make uploaded mass files like this easier. It's a pain in the butt to have manually enter things that should be able to be uploaded. I agree. I mean, I agree with that. Brian asked the same question that I thought. Wouldn't he just hire somebody to enter the information? Yes, and it doesn't even cost him anything personally. It would be that would be a campaign expense to file the campaign documents. That would be a campaign expense. As a business owner and having to fill out APOC said I do not have to name individuals. Well, it's for a different thing, Frank. It's for the rental incomes. Anyone who knows, who's tried to do anything with APOC knows it's plain terrible, cumbersome, and hard to find. I agree. Yeah. I remember I had to pay a $200 fine one time because I misfiled something. You're doing it all yourself when you're running for assembly. I was my everything. And I ended up having to pay an extra $200 out of my own pocket at that point because there was no more. It was all over. It was anyway. Ben says, TR, you're witnessing what is akin to a messy divorce. There are two sides to every story. And I'm sure there is. Again, I don't know the full details of it. I just wish them both well at this point. Taylor's a rich man. Hire a kid to do the entry. No exemption. He's hiding something, says Layla. I mean, I don't know if he is or not, but it certainly strikes me as weird. Let's see. Rules for thee and not for me, says Cindy. Wait until we ask him grand jury questions. Good luck getting them on the show, says Terry. Well, I mean, we're going to try. We're going to try for sure. Treg Taylor and Adam Crum will come on the show right after Mary Peltola. Whoa, shots fired there. Layla says, hypothetical. She put the story up. Taylor contacted the owner. She was told to take it down and she refused. Hence resignation because she wouldn't let corruption go unnoticed. Maybe. Brian says, it seems like such an innocuous story. It's hard to imagine it alone causing a departure. Like I said, this may have just been, she may have been kind of, ready to retire and do her own thing anyway, because she sold her shares last year, all her shares in the company. So maybe she, maybe this was just that final push out the door that she needed. I don't know. Let's see. Still have to file an APOC report, even though I didn't run this year due to me still having money left over for yeah. I mean, APOC has got all kinds of things. He definitely can afford to pay somebody to do everything, including renting out the place. It sounds weird to try and get out of that part of the transparency. I know, right? 250. I mean, if it's $1,000 a month, 254 units, that's $250,000 a month just in rent. I mean, and $1,000 is pretty low, but I mean, I would think that you could probably afford to keep that. And if it's a campaign expense, again, like I said, more questions. Yeah. How much time did you serve in APOC jail, Mike? Oh, just a few days. And it was only a couple $100 fine because I had done something wrong. I was only a couple days late or something. Anyway, the people at APOC that I talked to were very nice and they walked me through it and they were congenial and I paid the fine and reminded myself of why I never wanted to run for office again. Okay. I see Chris is in the background there. Are you with me, my friend? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just glad to hear you served some time in jail.
Yeah, I did, in APOC jail. Are you all ready? You ready to do this thing? Okay.
I'm ready to roll.
What's the story today? What's the story with Story today?
The Wheel of Who.
The Wheel of Who. I feel like I should cue up the Doctor Who theme on this one. The Wheel of Who.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll get to it then, and we'll be right back. We'll be right back at you. Hold the line for a second. Chris Story, the man from Homer. We're all ready to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do this thing. Yeah.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing now. One final segment for the show this morning. Chris Story, the man from Homer. I feel like there should be tumbleweeds, as he goes across the street. The man from the steely glint in his eye, the realtor, the potter, the writer, the guru of positivity walks down the street. Chris Story joins us this morning to talk about some stuff, to bring us up and to tear us down, and then to bring us back up again. The Wheel of Who is what he's talking about. You can find everything about Chris Story at I Love Homer, Alaska, even the stuff he doesn't want to share. ilovehomeralaska.com. That's where you go. Chris Story. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Only building up, no tearing down. After Brad, there's no need for me to tear anything down. Let's just build from here. We're at ground level. Let's build up.
Sometimes you have to tear it back down to the foundation to get started. You know what I mean? That's what I mean. It's not in a negative way. It's just,
Speaking of which, though,
yeah,
I got to get a hold of Treg Taylor and get him on my Backyard Millionaire podcast. That's pretty amazing. 240 units. That's doing good. That's pretty awesome. He'd be a Backyard Millionaire.
254 in that one building alone, I think, is what he's saying. That's
is that just the inlet towers?
I guess, I don't know. 234 units total is what it says.
That's
the Taylor Zone. 234 units. Well, no. I understand that they were changing it to a. Before I left Anchorage, the word was that they were changing it to rentals, and so they're making an apartment.
Thank God, I stayed there. Somebody brought me to Anchorage to do an auction one time, and they said, "Oh, we're going to put you up at the inlet towers." And as a child, I had recollection of that having been a nice hotel. And I got there, and I was like, "Oh my Lord!" I felt like I was at a homeless shelter. It was terrible. So I'm hoping that they will start from sheetrock, get down to the steel studs. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Foundation, yeah, exactly. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about the Wheel of Who.
The Wheel of Who, which might be you. No rhyming. Too early in the morning. I haven't had enough coffee to carry that on. But it's, and I'm not here to promote my book, The Schoolyard Millionaire. I'm not, Michael. So I refuse for you to put people in the notion that I'm trying to push that book on them. But I want to talk about who in two ways. One is, who do you have in your life, and who are you becoming? So, in other words, those are both bigly and important, who you are and who you have. So if you think about networking, I despise the word. I've always despised that word. Oh, let's be networking. And it just, to me, seems contrived, artificial, as though you're just using people. You can always see when you're in a room with somebody who is, quote, working the room, they're not spending any time with you, even though they're standing in front of you. Their eyes are scanning. They're just working the room. They're, quote unquote, networking. I can't stand it. It drives me nuts. But that said, you do need a network in your life. You probably have, Michael, more than most, because of your footprint around the state and the number of years you've been achieving this notoriety in this radio world. We all think we know you really well, and you've got a much bigger network than you probably can imagine. You probably have many, many people you could call at 2 a.m. and ask for bail money or hydroxychloroquine or whatever it is you want. You have a very large network. But the reality is, I think a lot of us do, maybe more than we realize, but it's that networking concept that some of us that we reject. I think we need to go back and revisit that concept and say, hold on, if you go to give to many, you can't help but getting from many. It's a reciprocity. The law of reciprocity works whether you like it or not, whether you observe it or not. You can't help but getting when you go to give. So instead of networking from the standpoint of what can I get from these people, do they have something that I may need down the road? No. Is there something you can give them today or down the road? Is there something you can offer them? And be aware of that. And so when you build a network from a giving level, you can't help but getting down the road and today, but also you can't help but build a very large network of people you can count on in the middle of the night should you need it. And Michael, if you're in a Mexican jail sometime into the future, I hope you lose my number, but I hope you've got somebody's number that you can call and help get you out of that jail, because they will.
Hey, I could see the guy going, "What do you mean, senor? Who am I? This backyard millionaire? Who am I calling here?" I know exactly who you're calling.
That's funny. It's mildly offensive. And then there's who are you becoming? So you have your network that you give and get from and that you contribute. And that's a nice evolving wheel of life. It's always going around. It's revolving every single day. But who you're becoming is also a part of that revolving wheel. And are you evolving? And I don't mean from an ape, but I mean, are you evolving in life? Are you growing through life or just going through life? You know people you've met that have lived the same year over and over again, and they just relive last year, next year, and will go on and so forth. And then you know other people that you could meet in 5 years from now, and they are on a completely different trajectory and path, and they've grown, not just older, but bolder, and in life have something more to offer each and every year. And so it's not as though you have to, be Craig Taylor and collecting, 254, 34 apartment units, whatever it is. It's not just growing your net worth. It's not just growing your bank accounts and so on. It's about growing as a human being. And it kind of ties back into whose lives are you contributing into. As you grow through life, you can't help but, give to more people the older you get, in theory. And it's a little bit like on Groundhog Day. Only instead of winning the hand of Andy McDowell, learning to ice sculpt to do really cool things, maybe you're just living the same year repetitively, or it feels like the same day again, over and over again, until or unless you look back and say, hold on, who am I becoming on this path, and who do I have to contribute to in their life as I go forward? Because I think a lot of people that might have reached a certain age, maybe retirement or just beyond, and feel like, wow, what do I have left to contribute? I know you have quite a bit. And if you're not already involved in a group like Rotary or another, service group, find one or find someone to pour into their life. Call somebody today you haven't spoken to in a while. Write somebody a handwritten letter. And most importantly, if you don't want to write a book, at least write a journal. Leave some fingerprints behind. What do you think about the world? What do you think about your life? And what advice would you offer to that next generation? So those are just some thoughts about who you are and who you've got in this world.
Okay, so talk to me about the wheel of who. I mean, what are we spinning it and figure something's popping out? I know you were trying to be clever with it, so hit me with the visual imagery here of what the wheel of who is.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for targeting the greatest marketing gimmick that I could offer for my book, The Schoolyard Millionaire, The Wheel of Life and Wealth. I picked the wheel because as the grandfather in the book is teaching his grandson, because the book opens with a line, "Papa, can I become a millionaire?" And then I tell the story over 75 pages of answering that question. And so he uses the reference of a bicycle wheel with spokes on it. And the spokes essentially are a roadmap towards the good life. And one of those spokes is who, but not just who you are, but who you're becoming and who you have in your life. And so it's a reference or a metaphor just for this roadmap that I wanted to put into something that would be tangible to think in terms of, like, oh, the spokes on a wheel. And the little grandson actually asks, and this is a thought that was literally going through my head, well, there's 7 spokes, why not 8? Because I don't know. There's 7. Just shut up and listen. There's 7. And one of them is who? Because as you think about it, again, I despise networking, or at least what I've perceived as the concept of networking that, again, is artificial in my mind and feels insincere versus, when you go to a church group or somewhere where you feel like, oh, this is sincere. This group comes together and to hold each other up, not to hold each other up with a gun, like they hold each other up physically, metaphorically, and spiritually. But it's networking. And who do you have when you're part of a group like that? You've got a lot of people in your life, and maybe you've got a lot of people outside of that sacred space, and you've got just people all over the country through digital networking now and social media.
Well, I think it's a question of intent, right? I mean, if you're going to some mixer just to press the flesh and network and connect with as many, versus talking with somebody and working with them, and it's uplifting. It's a it has to be mutually beneficial, right? It can't just
listening for an opportunity to help them, and then suddenly the law of reciprocity kicks in. Yeah.
No, I think that's right. And again, it's just one of the spokes of the wheel. Are you going to develop like all the other spokes too? Is this the next 6 shows is going to be the other 6 spokes of the wheel?
We certainly can, because guess what? One of those spokes is Treg Taylor. It's called wealth.
Wealth. All right. It's called wealth. All right. So the wheel of who? We need to figure out who we are and who we've become, or who we are becoming. And then again, lifting up other people. The true networking is when you help other people. You help yourself by helping other people, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. 60 seconds here.
And it basically, it's like Mother Teresa said, I can't remember the exact quote, but she says, do it anyway. People there will be injury and insult when you go to help people. Do it anyway. Same thing here. When you go to give to others, you're going to get, do it anyway. It's like suspending disbelief for a minute and just saying, you know what, I know that the law of reciprocity will kick in. I'm going to help this person anyway. It doesn't matter to me, because I want to go to give whether I get it or not. And guess what? You're going to get. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. When you help other people, you're actually in the long run helping yourself, because you're making the world better around you. And I think that's the important part. I couldn't have gotten where I've gotten without the help of other people, including the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Story. I Love Homer, Alaska is where you'll find his work, including The Backyard Millionaire and his latest piece, which will be coming out soon in audio as well, The Schoolyard Millionaire. Chris Story, thank you, my friend. As always, it's great to talk with you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, we're out of time for today. Tomorrow, Kendall Cruz and JT McComb-Rowe. It's all happening tomorrow right here at the Michael Duke Show. Be kind, love one another, live well. All right, Chris ditched out on us immediately. He doesn't really want to help people. It's the lie. Just kidding. People say, you guys are so mean to each other. No, not really. We're just, just doing our thing. All right, my friends. Well, we will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for coming in and being part of it and putting up with all the weirdness on Facebook today. We will see you in the morning, 6 a.m. Be here. Be square. We'll see you. Have a good day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.